name is Helen, and I'm a volunteer with the Spiritist Society of Melbourne. And today I'm going to be sharing my understanding on the topic, I Don't Deserve It. And it's very useful for these times that we're going through. So hopefully we'll be able to bring something interesting and something for us to think about. So I'm a student of the Spiritist philosophy, and what I'll expose today will be my understanding of the topic based on the Spiritist philosophy, at least what I know of the Spiritist philosophy to this day. It might differ from other people because Kardec was always a believer that people should have the liberty to think and the autonomy to think what they want, and that's aligned with their values. So what I might say here might differ from other people from this group and even other people that study the Spiritist philosophy. Although I'm going to try to my best intent to align what I'm saying with what the spirits brought to Kardec. Okay? So I don't deserve it. The question is, why are some born into misery and others into opulence without having done anything to justify the situation? Have you guys ever thought of a question like that? Or has that question popped into your mind? Why? Why is it that we have some people that are born into misery where others are born into opulence? And why is it that some never manage to achieve anything, while for others, everything seems to smile? That's a tough question as well. So these are the questions that we're going to try to answer during these next 30 minutes that we have together, and maybe bring some clarity and some different points of view for everyone to consider. So our study today is based on changing attitudes, and changing attitudes was dictated by the spirit of Hamed, and it was dictated to Francisco do Espírito Santo Neto, who was the person who wrote it. I'm also basing what I'm going to talk about today on the Spirit's book, and the Spirit's book contains the principles of the Spiritist philosophy according to the teachings of the higher spirits, and it was transmitted through various mediums and received and coordinated by Allan Kardec. So in order to try to answer those initial questions, we're going to start with another question. So what is it that we believe about life and the universe? And what is the source of all creation? Because if we're going to think of questions that are so difficult to understand, we have to start by understanding what is it that we believe about the source of creation. And that was one of the questions that Allan Kardec asked to the spirits. In fact, it was the first question that he asked to the spirits, and he dedicated the first part of the Spirit's book to try to clarify the idea of God, creation, the universe, because we, as human beings, the idea that we had or we still have of God is still not very comprehensive. So Kardec asked the spirits, what is God? And the higher spirits responded, God is the supreme intelligence, the first cause of all things. And the reason I brought this right at the beginning is because the word God has different meanings to different people, and in different religious beliefs, and in different philosophies. So for us, just so we are on the same page, God is the supreme intelligence, the first cause of all things. So it's not human-like, it's something much more comprehensive than maybe we are able to understand. In continuing, Kardec asked the spirits, when we state that God is eternal, infinite, immutable, immaterial, one, all-powerful, and supremely just and good, don't we have a complete idea of God's attributes? And the spirits started answering, well, from your point of view, yes. So every time I speak, I say the word God in this next few minutes, what I mean is this supreme intelligence that is the creator of all, and that is eternal, infinite, immutable, immaterial, one, all-powerful, and supremely just and good. But just to make it easier, I'm going to use the word God. So the spirits continued. So they said, from your own point of view, yes, those are the attributes of God. Nevertheless, you should understand that there are things that transcend the intelligence of the most intelligent person. Things your language cannot define because it is limited to your ideas and sensations. And you can find that answer in the Spirit's book, question 13. So what did they bring us? That for us, at this point of our evolution, we have only a glimpse of what God may be, or what the supreme intelligence is. But we do know its attributes. And one of its attributes is that it is just. And that is what we're going to be looking at when we think of the challenges that we face in life. So life's difficulties have a cause, and since God is just, the cause must also be just. So it might be that we, as humans, we only have a partial understanding of what God is, but we do know that it's related to love and harmony and justice. So everything that comes out of that should be aligned and should also be just and loving. So it might be, since that's what we can see, that God is just, so the cause of all challenges and sufferings must be just as well, is that there are mechanisms at play that we might not have complete understanding yet. And that's why we can't completely understand why is it that we go through so different challenges and trials throughout our lives. However, Hamed, in Changing Attitudes, he brings us that taking full responsibility for everything that happens to us, including feelings and emotions, is a decisive step toward maturity and internal growth. So if we know that we have the supreme intelligence guiding everything and that everything is just, we have to look at our lives and take responsibility of what happens to us. And what does that mean, in my understanding of what Hamed just brought, is that this isn't about blame. So people, they spend a lot of time trying to find who's to blame for something. And when we see that, it's nothing but a blame game. And it doesn't matter who was the person who caused something or the situation. We have to understand what is our part in that and what is our responsibility in terms of taking care of ourselves and people around us, if that's the case. So if we are pointing out and criticizing and trying to find somebody to blame, we're not looking at ourselves to see what is it that I can do and what's my part. of the responsibility towards that. And according to Hamed, when we do that, when we do take full responsibility for everything that happens, including our feelings and emotions, which at this point might be that people feel that I have no control over my emotions and feelings. When we do that, when we take that responsibility, we're actually taking a very decisive step towards maturity and internal growth. So he continues saying that people absolutely refuse to recognize the connection between their way of thinking and the external happening. So things that happen outside of us are colored by what's happening, by the way that we think and what's happening internal to us. So if we're always blaming and criticizing everything outside of us, that's something that we've been doing for centuries. And unfortunately, we learn that throughout our many lives. As you may know, Spiritism believes in reincarnation. That's actually one of the main principles of the Spiritist philosophy, that we live several lives, and these lives are progressive. So we start as spirits that are simple and ignorant, and during our journey, we come to this physical plane many different times. And during these times in the past, because we had no idea of anything and we didn't know where we came from, we always associated God, or at that time, gods, the many gods, to the forces of nature and to things that were external that people had no control. And interesting enough, because of storms and thunderstorms and volcanoes and natural disasters, people at that time had the impression that God was emotional and that he had some favorites and he had some that weren't pleasing them enough. So they started to bargain with these gods. And that's why we share this mentality. We perfected it, so we don't believe it as much, but we still see things according to our internal beliefs. But whatever it is that we believe, it does color and it does influence what happens or how we perceive what happens outside of us. And this is a very important topic because we're talking about when I say I don't deserve this because the situation is very challenging, I'm actually not looking inside of me to see where is it in myself that I have to improve. And I'm looking outside of me, trying to find the person to blame or the situation to blame outside of me. Whereas I have control over what's happening in my internal world. At least we have to learn how to have that control. I'm still learning as well. But it is something that we develop with time, and we have been developing. So when we look at something and it has a different color than what it really is, that color is our responsibility. I really like this photo because imagine that I'm standing behind this greenish kind of wall, and you are standing behind the blue wall. And I'm talking to you, and I see the reflection on the back of that wall, and I see a circle. And I say, no, what's inside, what's behind the wall is a circle. And you behind the blue wall will say, no, well, actually, it's a square. So both of our points of view are true to us, but it's not actually reality, which is the truth. So when we look at events and feelings and what's the thoughts that go through our head, many of it are distorted by our beliefs and the way we see things and our way of thinking. So I really like that because you can really see that two people can be really saying the truth and have a certain reality, and that is not the complete truth. So if we think about reincarnation and about our lives, Hamed said that these people who have the tendency of blaming and looking for the source of their suffering outside of themselves, they actually don't know that they are the architects of their own destinies. And that the past determines the present, which in turn determines the future. So everything that happened to our life, and by life I mean our spiritual life, which is one, and it's ongoing and it never ceases, as compared to our physical lives, which we can come and go and live different experiences. So our behaviors and the way we conducted our lives have influence on what's happening to us now in the present. And how we process the information, how we behave, and how we act towards ourselves, this is important, towards ourselves and towards others, will determine the future. And Hamed continues saying that no one can make us act or feel in a certain way without our permission. Other people and situation may stimulate certain reactions in us, but we are the ones to determine what these will be. So people outside of us, they can stimulate a certain reaction, but that doesn't mean that we have to react that way. And if we think of somebody who's causing us trouble or irritating us, they might get the reaction that they are stimulating, but ultimately it's our decision to react in a certain way or not. And if we're still not capable of controlling our reactions, it's because we just haven't learned yet. And if we look at many monks, and I met a monk, it's so interesting that everything they listen, they kind of give some time for that to process inside them before they answer. So you notice that they will react in accordance to their internal guide instead of react according to the environment. So I like this picture as well. This picture shows us that it's in our hands, the ability to change our lives. It really is in our hands. And to stop whatever is happening and to move forward in a different manner or in a different manner. And the way we do that is through changing the way we understand things and changing our behaviors. So Hamed continues saying that to take full responsibility for our actions and attitudes is to accept the reality of life. So the first thing is acceptance. So it's not a blame game, it's an understanding or an improved understanding. So our reality, and Hamed continues that in the book, he says that our reality are goals, and I would add they're divine goals or pathways that shape our future and conducts us towards a happier life. So if we take full responsibility for our actions and attitudes, we are actually accepting reality and we're following the path of this supreme intelligence, loving intelligence that's guiding us in the direction to our happiness. I like this picture because it really reflects that inside you're okay with what's outside. So instead of blaming others or the world for our defeats and setbacks, we have to keep in mind that life's difficulties have a cause. And since God is just, that cause must also be just. And that's what we started with, wasn't it? So if we look back at the questions that we asked in the beginning, that why is it that some are born into misery or opulence? And why is it that it seems like some people, and I use with volition the word seems, because it seems like a person can't achieve anything, but internally it might be that they're achieving immense amount of progress, even if outside. But it seems from the outside that things seem to never work for them. And we have to question that point of view. While for others, everything seems to smile. So if we look at that, we see that we have to have a certain level of acceptance and faith and broaden our understanding so we can see from a higher point of view that we are part of a bigger, much larger and broader picture. And our life that we see right now, it's just a little piece of a big puzzle. So the acceptance of what is and an unmovable faith that this loving supreme intelligence that in this chat I refer to as God is always favoring our progress. And this progress is towards our true happiness. So if we have that acceptance and faith, we're able to face the situations and understand that that was something that we needed to go through. So we wouldn't be saying, I don't deserve it. We would be saying, what is it in this situation that's pushing me even more forward towards my happiness? So if we look at this picture and we look back at our initial questions, everything is, and I'm going to put quote, in God's hands. So we have the supreme intelligence that created everything out of love. And despite us not seeing love in everything that's happening, it's just because we haven't broadened our understanding enough. So why is it that some people go through challenges and some people seem not to go through the same challenges? Well, in each case is very different from what we saw here. That life's difficulty has a cause. That cause is just, but it really depends on each one's unique life situation. And by life, again, I mean our eternal life and everything that we've been learning throughout our multiple incarnations on Earth. So each case is a different case, but if we know that we're in good hands and we accept and we have faith, things will go much smoother throughout our lives and throughout our challenges. Well, this is what I had to bring. And I wanted to thank everyone. And I hope this brought some food for thought so that we can think of our life and how we react to things, how we behave, and how we can use this knowledge and the teachings that the spirits have brought us to improve even further. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you the next time.